Hello, everybody. I want to welcome you here to the Prog Monster. My name is Murph. I am the host of this show. This is a show dedicated to progressive rock and other forms of rock music. So, I'm going to move up closer here so you can get a better view. Tilt this back just a little so I can get a little bit more light in there. So, we're here to do a show that we're going to do bi-weekly now. It's going to alternate with Hammer of the Gods. This is that 70s hard rock ranking. So every couple of weeks, I will do this where I'll pick a hard rock band who came out of the 70s, and I'll take the discography they had for only the 1970s, not the 80s or the 60s, just the stuff that came out in the 70s. And we'll rank those albums. I'll rank the albums according to how I like them. And you can do the same. That would be great. I like to see where people stand on some of these albums. It would be fantastic. Blue Oyster Cult is a band that, sorry, I'm just fixing my stack here. This is a band that came out in the 70s, obviously. I got my first album by them in the 80s, Fire of Unknown Origin, which came out in 1982, I believe. And for whatever reason, I just never bought any more by them. I'm not really sure why that happened. Probably should have. There was 2 or 3 albums that I looked at right away as purchasing, but each time I passed on them for something else. And so my Blue Oyster Cult collection never really grew until I started to channel. But the albums since then have grown in vast numbers. I think I have most of their stuff now. Maybe some of the later stuff I haven't got yet, but all 6 of the 70s albums I do own. And the last of those 7 albums, or last of those 6 albums from that time period, is just waiting. It's near the top of my waiting list to go into my playlist. And then, of course, I'll have had them all in the playlist at one point or another. This one here, I've listened to a couple times, but I haven't got a huge feel for it yet. So what we're going to do is I will give you those albums, the 70s collection. There's 6 of them in total. They're studio albums. And I'm going to rank them from my least favorite to my favorite, a normal way we do these things here. And then if you join me, we'll be able to talk about them, or you can give your own later if that's what you wish to do. So we're going to start with the number 6 album. And this one is in the 6th spot virtually due to its newbie to me. It's still new to me. So because of that, it doesn't have the same kind of impact as the other ones. So this is Mirrors. I believe it's called Mirrors, or is it just Mirror? It's Mirrors. I thought it was. So this came out in 1979. So the final album released in the 1970s. It's got some good stuff on here. Like I said, still pretty new to me. So not a lot to say about it other than I did like it when I heard it both times. I suspect it'll do well on my playlist. Blue Oyster Cult generally starts out fairly slow with me on their albums and then builds and becomes absolutely killer at some point. I do like the kind of different sounds that they have on almost all their albums, and how some songs will start out fairly popular with me, and then some of the other songs will come along a little bit later with the albums. That's generally how it works. So for me, number 6, virtually because of its newness to me, is going to come here at number 6, and that's Mirrors. The next album up is their debut album from 1972. This one's a little bit, I don't, for some reason, I didn't warm up to this album quite as much as I did originally. It's got some good tracks on it. And this particular one has 4 bonus tracks as well, all demos. Just different, I guess, basically just different versions of the songs. 10 tracks in total on the original album. My favorite song on this album is I'm on the Lamb, but I ain't no sheep. This is such a typical title for a Blue Oyster Cult track. Always a play on words, kind of funny, kind of quirky, but telling you a little bit about them at the same time. Or, you get some quirky songs like She's as Beautiful as a Foot, it's just weird titles, typical of them throughout their discography. Some albums have a little bit more of this going on than others, but this one has a fair bit of it. And so this particular version of it, the original recordings produced by Murray Krugman and Sandy Pearlman. This production of the reissued is by Bruce Dickinson of Iron Maiden. So, yeah, pretty substantial. Yeah, at least I think it's Bruce Dickinson of Iron Maiden. I can't imagine there's two of them, right? It didn't occur to me that I should maybe check on that, but I guess I could check on it with my other computer, but it's over there and I don't feel like getting up to go get it. So we'll just go on the assumption that that is the case. It doesn't necessarily mean it is, though. It could be a totally different guy altogether, but I don't think so. I think it's probably him. So yeah, so some good stuff on this album, but it just never got on traction with me. It's not as strong of an album for me as some of the others. Excuse me. These long days kill me, especially during the week. So their debut album, released in 1972, will be my number 5. Next up is my number 4. Number 4, another one of the black and white albums by them. Their first 3 were all black and white in color, so that's how they kind of got this title. This is Tyranny and Mutations. Good album. Probably, I'm going to go out on a limb and say this is the heaviest of their albums, at least from the 70s, for sure it is. The black, which is side 1, and the red, which is side 2. Got some bonus tracks on here too. Buck's Boogie studio version. Pretty good. So you've got the red and the black, OD'd on Life Itself, Hot Rails to Hell, and Screaming Diz Busters, which is the black. And then the red is Baby Ice Dog, Wings Wet It Down, Teen Archer, Mistress of the Solomon Salt, Quick Lime Girl. Yeah, pretty heavy album, I would have to say. I can see where, when they released this album, I can see where people got that kind of idea that they might be a metal band. So they've always been kind of touted as a heavy metal band, but I've never really actually thought of them as that. To me, they're a band that does a lot of different stuff. If I had to put a label on it, I'd probably call them a hard rock band. But they do a lot of pop stuff. They do a lot of quirky stuff. There's even some progressive stuff on their music on occasion. This album, I think, is the heaviest of them all, though, for sure. It's got some good tracks on it. It's pretty solid. I give it as my number 4. Next up, probably the album that gets the most attention only because it has the biggest hit, which is Don't Fear the Reaper. So there's a couple of versions of that on this album, which is Agents of Fortune, their 4th studio album, and the first non-black and white one. This one contains the hit single Don't Fear the Reaper, which is a big hit. I'm just about everybody at least knows that particular track. And I like that track, but there's a lot of better stuff, I think. Well, I wouldn't say better stuff, but stuff that I prefer to listen to more. The first one, This Ain't the Summer of Love. That's another quirky tune by them. I like it. True Confessions, I didn't really like it initially. It kind of grew on me a little bit. And then, of course, Don't Fear the Reaper, great tune. ETI is another great tune, or Extraterrestrial Intelligence, really good. The Revenge of Vera Gemini, another pretty solid track here. Sinful Love, and probably the song that I like the most on the album, Tattoo Vampire. Crazy song, but I like it. Morning Final at Tenderloin, and Debbie Denise. Debbie Denise is kind of a bit of a strange song too. And then it's got the bonuses on here, Fire of Unknown Origin, which they took off the original version, off of the original song. Sorry, it was the original version of the song on Fire of Unknown Origin, is what I'm trying to say. Sally, Don't Fear the Reaper, the demo version, and Dance the Night Away, which is also covered by Van Halen, but we got two covers here. A demo also. Yeah, pretty good. I don't mind the cover. It's a little bit kind of it's kind of gives me that creepy feeling a little bit, like something you might find on an Alice Cooper album, but still very good. Agents of Fortune coming here at number 3. So the top 2, I think the other 4 are decent albums. There's no bad ones. Haven't really listened to the bottom one, so it's not really a fair assessment of it yet. But the final 2 are easily my favorite 2 Blue Oyster Cult albums from the 70s. Maybe top 3 altogether if you're going with the stuff from the 80s and beyond. But since we're not doing that tonight, we'll just talk about these 2. So this one was the most current album from Blue Oyster Cult in my playlist, which is Spectres. This is such a good album. Can't say enough about it. It's heavy. I don't know if it's quite as heavy as Tyranny and Mutations, but definitely heavy. Got a lot of really catchy tracks on here. Godzilla is fantastic. We all know that anyways. That's one of their better and well-known tracks. The Golden Age of Leather, underrated, fantastic tune. Death Valley Nights, this is really good. Oh, hey, Will, how are you? Haven't seen you for a while. Welcome to the show. Yeah, Golden Age of Leather, great. Death Valley Nights, I like this. Searching for Celine, very good. Fireworks, fantastic as well. Are You Ready to Rock? Are You Ready to Rock? Really catchy. Celestial Queen, another underrated one. Going Through the Motions. This is probably one of my favorite tracks on the album that doesn't get a lot to talk about. And I love the night. And I can't even pronounce it, so I won't even bother. But anyways, and the first half of this album is really good, solid. It's probably one of my favorite sides of any of their albums. Yes, I am. I'm doing great. So we're just doing the Blue Oyster Cult thing tonight, just ranking the 6 studio albums from the 1970s. This would be my number 2 today. And the next up is from this album will be nominated for Masterpiece albums for me this year. It's been around long enough that it qualifies. And I'm growing a list of which albums I'm going to put in for my Masterpiece this year. And this one will definitely be nominated. Secret Treaties. I believe this is, once it's nominated, it's almost certainly going to be my favorite Blue Oyster Cult album. It's definitely my favorite from the 70s. There's no two ways about it. Shock the Baby. Nice to have you aboard. Welcome to the channel. And this would be my favorite Blue Oyster Cult album from the 70s, easily. I love every single track on here. When I had the album in my playlist, I was just playing it all the time. It stayed up there for about 8 or 9 months anyways on the list. I do like the artwork on this one, probably the best of any of their albums as well. That looks like a completely penciled drawing. I've seen these before. My daughter does this kind of stuff. Career of Evil, fantastic opening track, maybe the best opening track on any of their albums. Subhuman, really good too. Dominance and Submission, this is another one of those quirky tunes I was talking about that they tend to throw out there that's kind of weird, but the way in which they do it is the weird part, so it's really good. M262, which they're talking about this Messerschmitt 262 jet here. KG Cretans, another interesting kind of weird song. Harvest of Eyes, love this track a lot too. Flaming Telepaths, maybe the best track, second best track on this album, I think. And then it ends off with Astronomy, which is, I don't know, maybe my favorite Blue Oyster Cult song, period. Really good. The best part about this album is the bonus stuff. Hey, Ben, welcome to the show. Glad to have you. Sorry, I didn't post this show until today. I just didn't have time last night, and then I fell asleep, and when I woke up, it was morning, which is good, right? So there are 5 bonus tracks on this album. Borman the Chauffeur. This is another quirky song, but it's a typical Blue Oyster Cult song, and I love it. Mummy, this is one of my favorite of their songs. Mes Dames Seravat. I could live without that one. Born to be Wild. It's a decent cover of the song. It's not really one of my favorite songs, so I don't pair it. But the single version of Career of Evil is also on this. So they start off Career of Evil on the regular album and end with Career of Evil on the bonus tracks. So this is my favorite 1970s Blue Oyster Cult track album, sorry. Destined to be a masterpiece for me. Maybe it'll win the next masterpiece battle if I ever do another one. I wouldn't hold my breath, though. So anyways, I'll give them to you in the reverse order in case you're just coming in now and haven't seen this. So this will be my favorite from 1973. 74. Secret Treaties from Blue Oyster Cult. Their third album, their third of the 3 black and whites. My second favorite from the 1970s is this one from 77, Spectres. Really good. I don't think it's quite as good as Secret Treaties. I think Secret Treaties has a couple of tracks that kind of throw it over top. Next, third spot is Agents of Fortune, which features, of course, Don't Fear the Reaper. Most of you know that anyways. Pretty good. This is kind of a bit of a quirky album. It has some really catchy stuff and some really kind of weird stuff too. Next up, in fourth place, Tyranny and Mutations. This one I like too. It just didn't do it quite as well as those first 3 I said. It had its time in the playlist. All 4 of these have had their time in the playlist, as has the debut album, which is number 5. This one just didn't warm to me. I didn't warm to it. I didn't dislike it. Just didn't warm up to it the same as I did the other ones. And then this one is the newest for me. It's waiting its turn to get in my playlist. I suspect this one will rise up fairly high. Maybe it'll make the top 3 or 4 from that time period. And I'm sure that these albums would all rank fairly well against the 80s as well, the 80s albums as well, but we're only doing the 70s, and so this will be number 6 on that list. So that's kind of my ranking of the Blue Oyster Cult discography for the 1970s. So if anybody wants to talk about any particular album there, I'm willing to talk to it. Or if anybody has a different experience with the particular album, you can talk about that. Or maybe you just want to give your own feel for the 70s discography. Now, personally, the first album I ever bought was from the 80s. That was the, God, I'm drawing blank on it already. How can I draw a blank on an album that I was just talking about? I don't know. Maybe I am losing my brain. I don't know. Oh, the Fire of Unknown Origin. That was my first, so kind of have a special place for it, but it doesn't belong in this disc, this segment, so we're not going to talk too much about it. What was the album that got you into Blue Oyster Cult? Are You Like Me? Was it the later stuff from the 80s? Yeah, it's a pretty solid order for me. I think the problem with the other 2 black and white albums for me is that I've been trying to think about why is I don't like them as much as Secret Treaties. There's just nothing on either of those albums that really draws my attention. I guess that's the best way to put it. There's nothing terribly memorable. Like, I don't get anything too excited about either of the albums. They're not bad. Like, there's nothing bad about any of them. There's just nothing that really draws me like the Secret Treaties album did. Yeah, I've heard that. I have that album now. I think I have that album. I have two or three other albums by them that aren't on this list because they're not from the 70s, but I do believe I have that one. Or is that the most recent one, or is that the latest one in the 80s? I think it's the latest one in the 80s. I'm talking to Shock the Baby here. Oh, Some Enchanted Evening. I don't know that I even know this album. I don't remember ever hearing that before. Yeah, we all kind of did that. I started out with Fire of Unknown Origin and then went backwards. I also have I'm trying to think of the album's title, the one with a really long name, the Godzilla one. Well, it looks like Godzilla, but Godzilla is actually on the other album. But yeah, okay, no problem. I understand that. I'm at work. I don't get to chat much either. Yeah, I think the album I'm thinking of is the one with the ugly dinosaur on it, and I just can't think of the name of it. That one's waiting its turn too. So I try to go through each of these albums one at a time and put them in my um, playlist so that they get a fair shake. And once they're in my playlist, then they really get to be listened to regularly. But it's hard to get in the playlist because there's only 20 spots, and I'm real slow about taking them out. Cultosaurus, thanks. Cultosaurus erectus. Yep, that one is good too. Haven't listened to it too much yet, but I love the cover, of course. It's fantastic. And then there's some of the later stuff that's come out in the last maybe half a decade or a decade or so that I don't have, but will definitely get. I don't think, to me, I don't think Blue Oyster Cult really has a bad album. Some of them aren't as memorable as others. I guess that's the best way to put it. Yeah, and that sometimes is the case with Blue Oyster Cult. Not all their albums. Some of them, there seems to be some I take too fast, like I did with Fire of Unknown Origin, and also with Spectres. I took to them very quickly, but some of the other ones didn't actually haven't even taken to yet. Both Agents of Fortune and Secret Treaties took me a while, but then I liked them both quite a bit. I do like Secret Treaties the most, though. Yeah, I haven't seen that live compilation. I do have one live album by the Cult by Blue Oyster Cult, but I wasn't really sold. I didn't like it as much as I thought I was going to. Some bands do very well live for me, others not so well. It's the same with like the bands that come to mind, Blue Oyster Cult. I never really took to them live, and it's the same with Camel. I have a Camel one live, and it just didn't captivate me at all, really. But their studio stuff is so varied too. You never get bored with the Blue Oyster Cult because every album has something different. The album sounds completely different from their other albums, although they do have that thread of hard rock that goes through. They have a thread of catchy riffs that go through their music, and they also have them quirky songs that the titles are kind of strange. Yeah, always bringing something new to the table, no doubt about it. There's never, you listen to something like Fire of Unknown Origin, and then you go back and you listen to Secret Treaties. It's like two different bands completely. And it's like that with every one of their albums. They kind of, and I think part of that is because of their wide range of musical taste, and also that you have four or five different guys singing throughout the history of the group, right? And a lot of them on the same album. That's one of the reasons why I chose them tonight. Them being a band that, it's funny, when I bought the first one, I was still a big Kiss fan. I thought these guys are okay, but they'll never be as good as Kiss. And now I like them more than Kiss. So just goes to show you time and distance will change your perspective. Yeah, I've never actually followed 10cc, and I don't really know why that took place. I don't even know if I know anything by them, really. I know of them, of course. I've known of them for decades, and I'm sure I know something by them, but I just never pursued it. I'm not sure why. Maybe it's because this happens quite a bit. Some bands have certain songs that they have on the radio, at least they did in the day. And if I didn't like that one particular radio, I just steered clear of them. And that happened with groups that I actually love now, groups like Jethro Tull and Pink Floyd, who I didn't like the stuff that I was hearing on the radio, so I just wouldn't listen to them, right? Yeah, I haven't never. I can't even tell you anything by 10cc that I know. I can't. I know they've been around since the 70s. I don't know much about them. I can't tell you a single thing about them. But yet I know who they are. I've heard of them, obviously. I think that my experience with them is I believe that they're American. They're an American band. Could be wrong. Usually, what I usually do with bands, and maybe this is a wrong way to go about it, if I'm not sure about them or I don't think that I will like them, if I saw greatest hits, I'll take that and see if it does anything to me. But in recent years, I've tried to stay away from that practice because what generally happens when you do that is you're only listening to the stuff that's on the radio, and that's often the reason why you won't listen to them in the first place, right? So I've tried to go with people's suggestions as far as studio albums and see if I like it. That kind of happened with a band like oh Christ, now I'm forgetting their name too. It's just tired. I've been up since 4:30, so my brain is kind of mushy. Takes a while for what I'm thinking about to coalesce into a thought, right? Okay, so they're English. That's good. I didn't even know that. So now I know something. I know that they sound a little bit like Blue Oyster Cult, and I also know now that they're English. So maybe I will give them a listen at some point. I'll try to listen to this. What I usually like to do with bands like that people recommend is I will go online, look at their discography, and try to work my way through it to see if there's anything in there that strikes me. And that's how I kind of got into Griffin. That was a Griffin, and Chicago was another band I did that with. Yeah, I'm sure I've heard tracks by them. I've no doubt about that. There's no doubt in my mind I've heard stuff from them, but if you ask me to name something, I don't know if I can do that. Yeah, I'll have to check them out. So I'm gonna make a note of them when I'm done here. When I'm setting up for the Hammer of the Gods next week, I will make a note to put down that they will be in my listening list. So, but the last few months, what I've been doing with my listening when I do a entire discography of a band I don't know is I've been doing got away from that and have been going through the discography from the bands I do have and listening through them from top to bottom. Right now I'm working on all of my Judas Priest stuff. So I'm working my way through all of their discography today and have been for about a week and a half now. Yeah, I guess I kind of like it. I liked it a lot when it first came out. I was a big fan of that, but now I'm kind of not I hate to say this, but when I hear it at work, I just leave the room. It's just a question of being overkilled. There's a lot of songs. Come Sail Away was one of my favorite songs at one time, and I just can't stand listening to it anymore. Yeah, I'm with you on this. Shock the Baby. I just can't listen to it anymore. It's just overkill. There's probably about 20 or 30 songs that as soon as I hear them anywhere, I leave the room, or if I can, I turn the radio off or whatever. One Night in Paris, probably know it to hear it, but I don't know if I know it. I don't know it by name. Let's put it that way. Yeah, I'll put them on my listening list. Sometimes at night, I just plug the headphones into my computer, or at least the other computer, not this one, and I'll play that while I'm lying there. And if it keeps me awake, that's good. If not, then I go to sleep, right? Yeah, I'll have to check this out, Ben. That's a band that I've bypassed. I've bypassed without thinking about it for many years, and then in recent years, I've put them aside for bands that I'll be looking through some stuff that I want to listen to, and there'll be 5 or 6 bands in there, and they might actually be one of those bands, and then I just kind of put them down at the bottom rung. It's funny how that is. You get these huge rock stars like Freddie Mercury, or guys like that, and you'll find out that they really like some band that you don't know anything about, and you wonder why you don't like them, right? Yeah, that kind of what you said shocked the baby. That what you said about 10cc there. No one to take themselves serious, and ends up the band has a great sound of songs. That kind of is something that comes to mind when I think of Blue Oyster Cult. They're a group that sings some great stuff, but you can see they're not really taking themselves so seriously. Yeah, we'll have to check them out for sure. I'll check them out live after I'm done here, and then I'll go through their discography and see where I'd like to listen to it a bit. 2 people died at the show. That's a concert. It's almost like that in Cleveland, the Mistake by the Lake, when all those Who fans rushed in because they thought the Who were starting and they didn't get seats, and so they rushed in, and a bunch of people got killed in that. Yeah, has it already been that long? You think about it, it's been 10 years since Rush did the last time they ever played. Yeah, it's so long ago already. That's was this it? I'm guessing this was in Australia. It'd have to be, right? A lot of these bands, there's a lot of bands out there that are still touring, and you don't even know that they're alive. Really, you think they're gone. You haven't heard from them for years. How many of the guys in 10cc are still from the original group, or at least from the classic band? 2. Yeah, that's a pretty good number. That's about normal, actually. A lot of these bands, 1 or 2 guys still left. Most of them are gone. You know, and I was saying this a few weeks ago, maybe a month ago, how there's only a couple bands out there, maybe 2 or 3 bands out there who have the original members are all still alive. And Black Sabbath, I think, was one of them. And now then he dies. And so I'm thinking, oh, Christ, I better not say anymore. Kiss is a band like that, too. All 4 of their originals are still alive, too. Most bands, though, there's a lot of bands now that don't have any original members, and a lot of them are all gone, too. I think, if I'm not mistaken, Leonard Skinner has no originals, and I don't think any of them are alive either. somebody knows, they can correct me, but I think that's the case. Yeah, I didn't think so. I think the last guy, even their most recent vocalist, I think the original vocalist's brother, I think he's gone as well, if I'm not mistaken. Molly Hatchet, yeah, they're all gone too. Rosington, that's who was that, but passed away. Couldn't think of who it was, but thanks for that. I don't know that anybody's left from April Wine. You have the Brian Greenway, who's still alive, but he's not an original. I don't. There might be two of the brothers from the original three, but I don't think any of them are playing with April Wine now. And obviously, Miles Goodwin is gone. I think so they were originally Miles Goodwin, and then there was the three brothers, and I think from the classic band, Brian Greenway, of course, is still around, but I don't think any of the others are gone. The guitarist and the bassist, the other guitarist and the bass player are both gone. I'm sure of that. And then the drummer, he's in his 80s now. I think he retired some time ago. Well, there's nobody in the original left in the band, yes, that are playing in the band, but there's still a few guys around. John Anderson, of course, being one of them, and Tony Kaye, I believe he's still alive, and of course Bill Bruford as well. But none of those guys are in the Yes band, and I don't see any of them being in the band ever again. John Anderson, maybe if Steve Howe were to pass away, I'm not sure how their structure is. Maybe he could come back in and take over the band, but I don't know if he had the rights to it, if he'd have the rights to it, or that would fall to the next longest serving member currently in the band. Hard to say. I don't know what their legal status is. But yeah, there's no originals left in Yes. Steve Howe's the closest to that, and he's like a classic era member. Most people consider him original, even though he isn't. So the bands that I know, the original members are all still alive. Well, actually, the only band that I can think of offhand is Kiss. All four originals are still alive. Genesis has all of the classic era members still alive, although I don't know that they would ever, they're never going to play together. I'm sure of that. Everybody else, I'm hard pressed to think of any other band that's not missing at least one or two members or more. The Guess Who, I guess they could. They were to reform. They could have many. I think they could have as many as three of the original or the classic era member bands: Burton Cummings, Randy Bachman, Peterson. But I think the bass player is gone. He was with April Wine for a while too, I believe. Roxy Music, can't really say too much about them other than Brian Ferry. I'm not really familiar with their membership lineup. Yeah, I kind of liked them when I was younger, and then I've kind of drifted from them quite a bit now. I've had a couple of their albums. I just find myself not really paying attention to them. Yeah, I kind of stopped paying attention to them for quite a while now. That's happened with a few bands. Kind of drifted. I guess like Steve Miller was a top 15 band for me at one time, and they faded to almost twice that now. They're still the top 30, but it's mostly nostalgic reasons. But I will say in this year anyways, I've started to collect this stuff and listening to it again. So maybe he'll make a comeback, but there's a few bands like that. Rainbow, drifted away from them as well. Heart is a band that I've liked, but I don't think I could ever listen to any stuff from the 80s from them. It would have to be all 70s. They're likely to be one of the bands that I do on this 70s hard rock ranking too. They're a band I've considered it, but I did do a recent ranking on them, so I don't know that I want to go there right away again. Yeah, Heart is a band. I have my moments with them where I really like them, and other times I don't want to listen to them at all, and I'm not sure why that is. They when they did that tour with Styx and and Heart in recent years, I kind of followed them a little bit more, but um, yeah, I. It's funny thing with Styx is I love them. They're one of my favorite bands, but I don't often like the people that they tour with. Yeah, I'll definitely give a listen to 10cc in this week. I'm away all weekend, so I might not get to do it on the weekend. But if I get a chance, I will definitely give them a listen to. Definitely a band. People more than one person has said something to me about them, and more than one time I've been looking at stuff by them and just never went there. Moody Blues is another band, kind of was like 10cc for me, just a band that I knew a name and maybe knew a them I can actually remember a song by, but I've actually got two or three of their albums now, so maybe I'll get into one of them's actually waiting its turn. So maybe this is a band that's going to come to life for me. Who knows? Yeah, there's a lot of bands that have kind of begun to upgrade the sound of their earlier albums. Um, and that's good because some bands just had really horrible sounding albums initially. The music might have been good, but the album quality was really not there. Well, that's saying a lot. There's a lot of really good live stuff out there. Some bands I really love live. The Who is a good example of that. I have, I think, at least five Who concerts from different time periods that are among my favorites to listen to. It'll be interesting to see. This one's more for Will. I'd be interested to see if Geddy Lee and Alex actually do anything together. They've talked about it, but it's been 5 years now since Neil's passing, and I'm not hearing anything. And now they're into their 70s now, and maybe they don't really want to do that anymore. I mean, Alex did um, the recent group that he did, and that actually the album of Envy of Nothing, Envy of None is actually the second one is really good. I like it, but I don't think he toured with them. I don't think he toured. I think he just was on the album, and they had somebody else on tour with them. And I don't know that maybe Getty and Alex don't want to tour anymore. Maybe they might do an album together. I don't know. But without Neil, it's not going to be a Rush album. It won't have that effect. So sometimes it's better to just end it and move on to something different, right? Yeah, a lot of people have said that about Leonard Skinner. The funniest part about Leonard Skinner, the thing that I always found the most memorable is that they toured with Queen, which to me is got to be one of the biggest mismatches in history. And it's not that either band is bad or good; they're both good, but I can't see the crowds from those two mixing very well. But there was quite a bit of that in the 70s. A lot of these bands thrown together and touring together that really didn't make any sense. Like I never understood AC/DC and Black Sabbath. To me, that's not a very good marriage either. Apparently, it wasn't either. So, and I think a lot of that is just whoever's promoting these, sometimes the same promoter, sometimes the same record label, sometimes the same touring time periods. To all throw these guys together with these guys. But I've seen even myself, I've seen like Teenage Head with Triumph. That was a really serious difference there for sure. The crowd was completely different from each other. Yeah, that's probably a crazy mix. 38 Special and Iron Maiden. That doesn't make any sense. But then, GNR and Iron Maiden played together too, and I don't see that as a very good marriage either. Like I can't imagine. Iron Maiden is one of my favorite bands. I don't think I can. I might not, if given tickets to see them and Guns N' Roses, I don't think I could stand that one. I definitely would stay for the Iron Maiden part, but probably leave immediately after they were out of it, or maybe whoever was headlining. Yeah, that might be the case. Yeah, they just don't sound anything alike. But sometimes it works out. It's not always the case, but I'm not sure who Paul Day is, Ben, but rest in peace. So this is a recent passing. Would I know this guy from? I don't know. If I don't know the name offhand. Maybe I know him, but I don't know the name. Oh, okay. Prior to Diano, I would assume. Is he prior to their record label, before they had a record? I don't know. He wasn't on the first album. I know that was Diano, so he must have been prior to that. Oh, hey Wade, welcome to the channel. We've changed the topic, Wade, in case you're wondering. We're just now talking about bands that played together that maybe didn't have a great fit with each other. So he was on their first album. I'd have to go look at it. I never. That's a one Iron Maiden album. I'll say it, and I'm not trying to knock the album. I just can't warm up to that one. Oh, you think the Dio Sabbath and the Blue Oyster Cult together? Kind of a weird combo. Yeah, people have always. I don't know why this is the case, but they always say that Blue Oyster Cult is a heavy metal band, and I just don't see it anywhere. They have their hard albums for sure. Spectres is hard. Tyranny and Mutations is hard, but to me, it's not even close to metal. They did have a couple of songs that the word heavy metal in it, but okay, so he's like an original, like he would be like Dave Evans from AC/DC. Wasn't really on an album, but was their original singer, kind of that way. Yeah, to me they're not metal. So putting Blue Oyster Cult with Black Sabbath, especially with the Dio era. So the original Black Sabbath was heavy, but more of a doom metal sounding albums, and then they had quite a bit of stuff in there that wasn't even metal. That was, I don't even know what you would call it. Some of it is almost progressive, some of it kind of folky, but none of that on the Dio metal albums. Those were pretty heavy stuff. Yeah, definitely not metal. I don't know why people always say, "Oh, Blue Oyster Cult's a metal band." Even if we didn't have the more modern metal sound, even if we were going back to the 70s, they wouldn't even be classified as metal, in my opinion. Yeah, they definitely have they have more prog in their music than metal for sure, and they probably have uh, some kind of poppy stuff too. I might call them a pop band at times, but never metal. I always think of them as a hard rock, kind of rock and roll, pop, progressive elements to their music. I would never they wouldn't fit in one of these metal fests, that's for sure. I even think that Ozzy was more metal sounding than Sabbath was, in my opinion. Sabbath, at least the original Sabbath, when Ozzy was with them, was a band with a lot of different sounds to them: heavy blues, heavy metal, progressive sounds to it, some kind of acoustic, classical sounds to their music, even some pop at times. Um, but Ozzy was more straight on metal than Sabbath was when he was alone. He didn't have the blues, as much of the bluesy element. Yeah, he did, but it wasn't even that he brought that rainbow heavy metal sound to Sabbath. They just were much heavier than Rainbow even. That first Sabbath album with Dio on it is pretty damn heavy. Yeah, he did. He kind of steered clear of that kind of bluesy element. Although there was a little bit of bluesy stuff on the first album. There was more a classical element on the Ozzy stuff early on than bluesy stuff, and definitely he was more of a metal sound. Yeah, a lot of people say that. I think early on, you're probably right. I think there was a lot of different elements to that Sabbath stuff. The first couple of albums were psychedelic, even in some of their nature, and hard rock. I never really thought of the early ones too much as metal, except for uh, maybe Master of Reality. The rest of them were just kind of hard rock with a lot of different elements to their music. But definitely when Dio came on board, they became much more of a metal album sounding band. I prefer the originally I would have preferred the Dio era of the band, but over the years I've kind of grown more interested in the early Sabbath than I really was originally, even though I did always like them. Yeah, he definitely has to me, he has an interest in a lot of different styles of music. He's not just a metal guy. He's really good at the metal part, but I think he does. Yeah, most people prefer the I think the Aussie era, but I don't want to get into the comparison between Dio and Ozzy because that's going to piss people off. I'm definitely a Dio guy. There's no two ways about it. I do like Ozzy a lot, though. Don't get me wrong. Um, that early Black Sabbath is pretty much it's it's unrepresented in any other band out there. I think there's some doom metal bands that I like and some stuff I like, but there's nothing like that original Sabbath sound. If you were gonna ask me, I I'm kind of like you in a way, Ben. I don't think of Sabbath as solely a metal band where Judas Priest and Iron Maiden I do. So when I'm thinking about my favorite metal bands, even though Sabbath will be my favorite metal band, um, if you were going to eliminate any other elements but metal, I think that they wouldn't be as metal sounding as Judas Priest, and I think Iron Maiden's even more metal sounding than Judas Priest. But there are two bands that have a multitude of great albums. Iron Maiden, I other than their first album, which I didn't really warm up to, and that's primarily because it doesn't really sound as much like Iron Maiden's other stuff. Other than that, I like most of their stuff. Of the ones I own, there's one or two I don't own, so I can't comment on them. Judas Priest is the other is a little bit different. They have some absolutely stellar albums, and then they have some really kind of almost poppy stuff. Yeah, I went through that period in the last year where Priest was kind of, I liked them more than Iron Maiden, but Iron Maiden is kind of over this last year kind of made up the ground and passed them again. So I would say Iron Maiden is a top 10 band for me now, passing even Zeppelin, just because of the recent albums that I've been listening to that I never owned before, and they have like a string of 6 or 7 or maybe even 8 albums in a row that are just top charts. Yeah, some of the early Priest, the first album for sure had a very proggy element to it. I'm not sure about the second one. That's the one that I don't have. I have all the other ones, but I don't have that one. Yeah, I was the same. What I'm saying is I was a Maiden, and then I liked Priest second. But in the last year or two before this year, Priest had kind of taken over that. They had rebirthed themselves and were doing very well. But then now Iron Maiden this last year has really come back, and I think they've moved back ahead of them again. I don't know. I went through a period with Iron Maiden for about 5 or 6 years where I was kind of washed up with them, I guess, because I only had like maybe 5 or 6 of their albums, and I love those albums, but I kind of had burnt them out, I wasn't playing them much anymore. Same with the Van Halen. I don't really listen to Van Halen anymore. Kind of, to me, Van Halen, Heart, Rainbow are all bands from my childhood that I just don't follow as much as I used to. Yeah, Judas Priest and Iron Maiden, even though they're always lumped together, they don't really sound much alike, really. To me, when I listen to Judas Priest, I hear traditional metal sound, like hard grinding, catchy riffs, very loud sound. With Iron Maiden, when I think of Iron Maiden, I think of more early speed metal and much faster paced and more tight sounding, not as up and down or bombastic, not peaks and valleys. Where with Judas Priest, there's more of that. With Iron Maiden, it's more straightforward metal sound, right? And I do like both bands quite a bit, though. Yeah, definitely prog that's my big one. And I kind of bounce around with metal and hard rock, and I'll be honest, I quite enjoy the classical kind of prog, and I enjoy the folky stuff too. I do like quite a bit of folk music, I have to admit, or folk rock, I guess, might be more descriptive of it. Yeah, that's the one album I actually seen this album, their Judas Priest second album, Wings of Destiny. I've seen this album over and over at the store, and they always want a ton more money for it than any of the other ones. And I'm thinking it's because it's the best one, but I never quite want to spend that extra money to get it. I don't know why. I keep hoping that they'll drop it, but they don't. So it's the only one of the 70s albums I don't have. and yet I want it. Every time I go in there, I look at it, hoping it's going to be less, and it never is. So it's definitely high on the level. I probably will get to a point where I'm saying I'm going to get it anyways. I don't care the cost. I did that this week with the Revenge of Alice Cooper. I've not even heard anything of it, and I just went in and bought it, and it's more than the Judas Priest was. So, sometimes I'm not thinking too clearly. Yeah, I got a big country album recently too. At least I think I did. Oh yeah, I did. It wasn't on this most recent new album's purchase. It was on the one before that. That's a band I liked. I liked them, and I never got anything from them, but I always liked them. And then when I saw this one, I grabbed it, and I will probably once I get play it the first time, I will probably be listening to it quite a bit. Yeah, I think it's just a matter of all of the other Judas Priest albums from the '70s, from Rock-a-Rolla right through to Point of Entry, were all relatively. I think for the new albums were relatively like between $10 and $14, but for some reason, Wings of Destiny is always at 19 or 20. But since I paid 22 for the recent Alex Cooper album, to me it just makes no sense that I wouldn't buy that one. Yeah, the encore video they had about 2 or 3 of the big country albums, and I bought the one right off the bat, the one that I liked the most, and now I'm looking at the other ones thinking, yeah, they got to be on this month's list, but there's like this list has 50 albums on it, so somebody isn't going to get bought, right? They're a good band though. They have it's that Scottish sound to their music that just kind of gets in my blood, I guess. I don't even know if I know this here. That's a song by them. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, there's always some for some reason there's a few bands like that where they have one song for whatever reason that I can't really explain that gets under me and inside me and I just love it. But I don't like anything else by them. I don't know why that happens. Yeah, I'm not really a country fan at all. In fact, if you're ranking the type of music I dislike the most, that it's right there. Probably rap and then country music. Those are probably the two I dislike the most. There's very little by any of those that I like. My parents played country music till it was coming out of their yin yang, and I got a negative experience from it, and I just can't go back to it. Yeah, I would say it's alternative pop, but it came out during the new wave of new wave music time period, and I've always thought of it as new wave. But there's some new wave stuff I like a lot, and other new wave stuff I don't want to hear. It's probably like that with a lot of genres. There's metal that if you get back to metal for a minute, like I like progressive rock and I like heavy metal, but for some reason I don't really care for progressive metal. I don't like Dream Theater, really, not at all. Queensryche's the same way. Can't listen to them. I do like the other one, Fate's Warning. I don't mind them. They're the only one of the three. The other two, you can have them. I'm not interested. I don't know why that is. You would think that because I like progressive rock and because I like heavy metal that I would be right into it, especially the progressive stuff by Iron Maiden. I like a lot, but for some reason, I just don't like progressive metal. Yeah, Dream Theater doesn't do anything for me. I've got a few of their albums. I've tried to listen to them. In fairness to them, one of the albums I have is rated very low by even Dream Theater fans. So I can kind of maybe grab the wrong one. Maybe I'll change my mind. But I do like doom metal's probably my favorite metal. I'm not a big thrash metal or black metal person. I do like some of Opeth stuff, but it's because of the instrumentation, and the guy's voice is fantastic. Even the growling part isn't too bad. Yeah, I just don't care for Dream Theater. Not a fan. There's a few bands that a lot of people like that I just, yeah, no thanks. Yeah, some people really like glam hair metal. I can't say there are a couple of the bands that I don't mind. For some reason I like Rat, but I don't like Motley Crue at all. They're one of my most disliked bands ever. I don't know if it's too catchy or it doesn't do anything for me. Like, I've listened to the album, and if you ask me what I heard, I sometimes will say I don't think I heard anything. There are bands like that for me. Yeah, I don't see them as being a top 100 band for me ever. I don't see that ever happening. I don't know that it doesn't bring anything new. It just doesn't do anything for me particularly. They're a well-loved band by a lot of people, Dream Theater. Some people will tell you they're one of the best bands of all time, and then now with the drummer coming back in, they're gonna even be bigger. But yeah, no. I think I did a review of what's new on their most recent album, but I did the same thing with Opeth though on the most recent album, and I actually liked it initially, and then it just kind of faded. Didn't really do what I hoped it would do. Unlike the most recent Judas Priest album, which I really like a lot. I think it's one of their best. Yeah, I kind of think that, Ben, you're probably right there. They're a good band, very talented. They write good stuff. A lot of people like them, but I don't think they're in the top 100 for me either. They're a band I don't really think much about, to be honest. Yeah, Motley Crue. It began and ended with me after the first album. I kind of got into a couple songs off of that first album, and then quickly didn't want nothing to do with the band anymore, and it's never returned. So, and now it's got to a point where I don't even want to hear about them. That's how bad it is. I don't have many bands I really dislike. Usually, if I don't like you, I just don't listen to you. And in order to dislike something a ton, you have to actually listen to it enough to say to yourself, I really don't like this band. And I just and a lot of that's because of the radio. I used to listen to the radio a lot, so if I didn't like a band and they came on, I would just get annoyed with it and annoyed with it all the time. But since I don't really listen to the radio much anymore, I don't really have that kind of hatred anymore. Yeah, some people like Dawkins. Can't really comment about them. The only two things about Dawkins I know is that Sydney Taylor likes them, and that they play kind of glam metal sound to their music. That's about all I know about them. Yeah, I tried listening to those Bullet Boys. I don't even remember what the circumstance was why I was listening to them, but I did not like them at all. Yeah, some people really like Dawkins, so I haven't kind of dismissed them or not dismissed them. I just haven't paid too much attention to them, really. Kind of, I guess I kind of just stopped with them. That's a band I've heard of, Kicks. Don't know much more about them than that. It's getting to a point, though, now with music at this stage of the game where you're going to have to kind of start really giving a lot of newer bands a really fair shake and listen to them, because most of the classic iconic rock bands are pretty much done now. You got maybe 5 years with some of these bands left, and then there won't be any of them left. You'll just have either the band will be completely gone, you'll not hear anything from them again, or you'll get bands that are using their name, but they're really either don't sound like them at all or really aren't them at all. So, that's going to happen. Or you'll get like, these, what they're talking about is being, I can't even think of the name. Bands would they just like Kiss is going to do this. This is coming. They're going to have avatars. That's what I was thinking of. There'll be a new Gene and a new Paul, and they'll go with a new Ace and a Pete or two. So you have 4 guys dressed like them. It'll be like a cover band, but they'll have the Kiss logo, and they'll play all their concerts with all of the big makeup and everything, and that's the way it is. Oh no, the Grateful Dead. No, thanks. I would rather be dead. Sorry. I had a guy I used to hang with after church on Wednesdays sometimes, and we'd go to his place, and that's all he played was the Grateful Dead. I didn't really dislike it or anything, but I can't even remember any of it other than he said it's a Grateful Dead. To me, they're kind of a jam band. And I've never been a fan of jam bands. If you look at all the bands that people would list as jam bands, you'll probably find I wouldn't listen to any of them. But you never know. All things are changing now. The more exposed to music I get, the more stuff that's new to me that I listen to, the more my sensibilities have changed somewhat. Yeah, I get it. You also have a ton more albums than I do, and you've listened to a lot more stuff, and your brain is craving more stuff, and so your mind is opening to the possibilities of some bands maybe before you wouldn't have. I get it. Yeah, I can't say I dislike the Grateful Dead. I guess I probably overreacted there a bit. I wouldn't say I dislike them. It's just I've never pursued it. I do know some of their stuff, of course, and then of course you've got they've got a ton of stuff, so it would be easy to open that rabbit hole and go down it, I guess. Yeah, I always liked the Stones, but there's another band like Blue Oyster Cult for me. I had one album by them and I loved it. Absolutely loved that album, and I played it all the time and would listen to it. And then of course I know the Stones have a ton of greatest hit stuff out there. So there's very few albums you can buy by the Stones where you haven't heard at least one or two of those songs. And now I went through a period last year and I got like now 12 or 13 of their albums. So it's really built up quite a bit. Yeah, I like some of the earlier stuff by the Stones that I'd always heard about but never owned. Yeah, that happens too. Usually bands that I've overplayed, rock and roll bands specifically, not so much the progressive stuff, but the rock and roll bands who have a certain sound, I kind of burn out on that and then I don't want to hear it anymore. Yeah, I like ACDC still. Not as much as maybe I used to because The stuff I like is the early stuff right up to Back in Black, and then I don't know that I really know much of anything after that. There's a few songs going forward that I know, and a few of the albums I know a little bit of, but. And like Ben, I have returned to the Beatles with a vengeance. They were a band that were kind of sitting out there just doing nothing for me for years. And then I went to a store one day and they had 2 or 3 of their CDs for like $1.50 each, and they were in good condition, nice digipacks, and I bought the 3 of them, and that just exploded. Now I got them all. I have all their stuff. And the one that I really didn't think much of when I got it basically to complete the collection, is now the one I'm kind of liking the most, which is the White Album, because there's a lot of different stuff on that album, more than any other of their albums, I think. Yeah, even those early albums, Please Please Me, I think is really good, a really good album. There's a lot of good stuff on that. Maybe not the other ones around it so much, but that one definitely. And both of their soundtracks, Hard Day's Night and Help, are both good too. I do like Hard Day's Night better though. But it's that stuff like the later stuff after Rubber Soul. It's all really good. Yeah, I get it. You get into certain things and you can only dedicate so much time to something. So it has to be something you really want to listen to. And there's just, I hate to say it, but ever since I started this channel, there's just so much stuff. Like I got this whole rack here is just albums I have not listened to yet that I bought. I just haven't gotten to them. But every one of them I want to listen to. I bought them for that reason. Right? And I just added another 13 or what was it, 13 or 14 yesterday to it. I went through and picked out all the Iron Maiden albums out of there and listened to all of them and put them on my rack. And there's only so much space in my playlist, and I like to play my playlist. That's how my ear develops. I listen to an album repetitively over time, and then all of a sudden, bang, it gets a special place. That's how it worked for Gentle Giant, which is now one of my favorite bands. Yeah, I don't think I'll buy that, to be honest. I seen it, but there isn't really anything in it that I don't already have. I know they've probably done a lot of work to upgrade it and stuff, but I just like their discography the way it is for me. So I don't know that I'll buy that. I might, but you never know. For me, Geddy Lee, I didn't like his voice initially when I first started listening to them, but now I can't imagine them without him. I've acquired the Geddy Lee voice taste. I think it happened some 45 or 50 years ago, but I like his voice. I don't, I think the problem with their last album that took me so long to get into is because his voice was not particularly good on that. Yeah, Steve Hackett especially the live stuff, Ben. Some of that live stuff that he puts on the DVDs and stuff is so good. Like, not just him, but some of the other people that he gets on stage with him. The guy that plays all of the off instruments, like the bassoon and the flute, and that, he's so good. That guy, Townsend is his name. I can't remember his first name, but fantastic. I enjoyed watching the live box set that I bought of him. Like, it's got two live. It's got the DVD for the live, and then it's got 2 albums with it too. Really good. Yeah, you're right about that. It's the stuff that's come out now is so much better sounding than a lot of the stuff that we had in the 70s was just kind of poor quality. The music was great. The quality of the albums and the production of the albums were not great in a lot of cases. It's funny that you say that because the only in the last 40 years, the only time I've enjoyed anything that Axl Rose did was when he was covering for Brian Johnson in AC/DC for that brief period. I actually thought he wasn't too bad. Well, that's good that the sound is the most important thing. I need to upgrade both my CD player in here and the one I have in the front room, which the Sony I have in the front room is good. It's not bad, but I would much love to replace that. But that'll depend on how everything goes here in this country over the next year, and I don't want to get into that at all. There's nothing better than good sounding music by bands that you really like. Yeah, the speakers are the most important because that's what's going to be playing the sound. I get that. But I won't be buying anything without your advice on that anyway. So when I'm ready, I'll ask my questions or take your recommendations. I had a nice system for a fairly lengthy time, but it got old and the turntable didn't work as well as it was before. And the sound of the speakers, the woofers may have gone a little bit on it. They weren't way off, but they definitely had. They definitely didn't. I think the headphones might be the way to go for me in this building, though. I like to get a good set of headphones. I did see a set that I wanted, but I didn't buy them because I just didn't have the money at the time. True. That makes perfect sense to me. Yeah, Axl Rose. His voice, actually, it kind of suited the AC/DC sound because it's a lot harsher than it was before. And, and Brian Johnson had some real sound of problems with his voice at one point too. But I just think that a harsh sound sounds best with AC/DC. I just think it does. I would have preferred Bon Scott's voice, but we're not going to get somebody like that. That would be difficult to find. Yeah, I don't have. He has a lot of soft spots, most of them around the middle of his body. Yeah, not a fan of Guns N' Roses. Really, I do have the first album. I will admit that I have about a half a dozen of the U2 albums, which kind of surprised me when I was looking through my moving stuff around. I said, "How come I have so many U2 albums?" But I have a lot of them. But I just never listened to them anymore. I'm gonna move this over here so I can move this down a little bit. Yeah, it wasn't really called for, was it? He's not suffering on the refrigerator front. Let's put it that way. I just wish that when a band does a final tour and fans are paying thousands of dollars to go see them, and they buy the tickets because they want to be able to say, I was at the last Guns N' Roses tour, I was at the last show, and then they put all this money and effort into it, and then you come back out 2 years later and do another tour. It's really it really is demeaning to the people who've supported you for all that years. If you don't want to do a last tour and you want to keep going on, that's fine. Lots of people are doing it. The Stones don't do a final tour. They probably never will do a final tour. Even when they're all gone, there'll be somebody up there doing Rolling Stone stuff. I'm sure of it. Maybe Keith Richards they'll just prop him up on stage. People might not notice that he's dead. They might not. I mean, that's going to go on. I don't have a problem with people doing that. If you want to do it and people want to pay money to see you, great, do it. I don't think it's good for people like Madonna to go and dress the way she does and go on stage. Like maybe you might want to be a little more respectful to yourself than that. But yeah, yeah, I think my Kiss days are probably over. I do once in a while pull out the odd one. Usually, I hate to say this, I usually go to Dynasty. I don't even know why. It was never one of my favorite albums, but it's different. So I sometimes go to that one. I think it's the sound on it. I think Ben might be right. It's one of the better sounding early Kiss albums. Yeah, I used to think that about them too. But if you were put a gun to my head and say, who's the worst band that you, who's your worst band? Who do you hate the most or who do you dislike the most? It's not really a contest. It's Guns N' Roses. They're at the top of that list. Even people like Def Leppard and oh, who am I thinking? Def Leppard comes to mind. Pearl Jam, Nirvana. I don't really hate those bands. I just don't listen to them and I don't really like them, but I don't hate any of them. Guns N' Roses in a class by itself. And I'm sorry if that disappoints people, but there isn't much about them I like. Yeah, a lot of people say that about Def Leppard's early stuff, and I never was into them. I never followed them. My friend was into them. He bought the first three, and well, he got the first two for sure. I remember when he bought the first one, and did nothing for me, but he liked it a lot, and I didn't dislike it. I just would never. I never followed them. They were a band I just never followed, so I can't say much about them. I know that Put a Little Sugar on It is probably one of the worst songs I've ever heard, though. I heard it actually the other day. I can't remember where. I think they were playing it at work. I thought, God, this is terrible. Yeah. So I'm not. I don't. So Def Leppard doesn't qualify to me as a bad band. They're just not a band I would listen to. Pearl Jam's another one. I kind of actually liked their first album, Pearl Jam, and then I didn't like it. And then I didn't like Nirvana either. And it just kind of, that whole grunge thing just didn't sit well with me. I will admit that I do like Soundgarden on occasion. Yeah, it's a god awful song, and unfortunately, it's got their name attached to it. That sometimes hurts a band. It might be a big hit, and then it's attached to your name, and you got to play it everywhere you go, and unfortunately you can't escape it, and then you wish you never played it in the first place. But it happens. Lots of bands do it. Get stuck playing stuff they don't even want to ever hear again. I kind of like the if I had to, if somebody said you have to listen to one Def Leppard album regularly, I guess I would probably choose the their third album, even though it's kind of moving towards that era that I don't like. There are some stuff on that I still don't mind, except for Photograph. I don't want to ever hear that one again. Some of the other stuff isn't too bad on that album. To me, when I think of that album, I always think of the Scorpions. What's the name of the album? Blackout album. Although I like that light years more than the Def Leppard album, but they just kind of feel like they're the same time period. They even sound a little bit the same to me. Yeah, Hysteria is not a good album. And the funny part, it's the only one I have. I got it. I bought a box of. I was at somebody's yard sale and they had a bunch of CDs in the box, and I wasn't looking at the CDs. I was looking at the jewel cases because I wanted extra jewel covers in case some of mine broke, and that's the cheapest way to buy them. Because those ones are the harder ones rather than the ones that you buy in the store now, which are kind of not so hard. So I would often buy the entire box and get home and find, oh, there's actually a few albums in here I don't mind. And that was in one of those boxes. So that's the only reason I have it, I think. Yeah, a lot. My friend always said that to me too when we were growing up. He said, this is a really solid album. It's really good. It's easily their best, their debut album. I just didn't get into them. But he liked the Doors too and used to play them a lot. And I used to tell him, I'm not coming to your house if you're playing them. And now I like them a lot. He would, if he was here today, he would say, there's no way he must be lying to you. There's no way he likes them. He tried his best to get me to listen to them. Yeah, they're just not a band for me. I don't dislike. I know lots of people like them. I just don't see, like, the people who say they're one of the original what they call them, new wave of heavy metal, along with Iron Maiden. I just don't see it. I don't see how they. To me, they're not a metal band. They're a hard rock band. Yeah, I sometimes force people to listen to what I listen to when I put my stereo on. They haven't evicted me yet, though. Yeah, a lot of people say that about Jim Morrison. I think his singing is fine. It's when he starts reciting poetry that kind of loses me a bit. And I used to hate that about him. And he's like, don't play me that crap. I never liked the sound of the keyboards on the Doors albums. That was my big issue with him. I couldn't stand that. It sounded so amateurish. The sound of the keyboards, not the keyboard player. I want to make sure I'm clear about this. Keyboard player is good, very good in a lot of cases. But that keyboard he chooses to play, I can't stand the sound of it. I don't dislike it anymore. I don't actually notice it as much. They just write so many, like, unbelievably great songs that I don't know why it took me this long. It took me till maybe 3 years ago, and now I have the entire Doors collection minus the ones that Jim Morrison wasn't on, even though I tried to get those as well. Yeah, it might be. I could see people saying that about them. I believe that. That's a case. Proto-Gothic. I don't know if they're proto-Gothic. They're definitely different. Nobody sounded like them. You listen to all those bands from the late 60s, mid 60s upward. There's nobody that sounds like the Doors. They're totally different. Like them or don't like them, they had their own sound. I do like Alan Parsons. I actually went through a stint. So Ben talked me into listening to their big album, the Eye in the Sky. So I did listen. I liked it. And I didn't like it at first, but then I started listening to it more, and then I found it in my playlist. And the next thing I know, I've got seven or eight of the Alan Parsons Project albums now. I just went through this binge where I had to have them, right? So that's sometimes how it happens with me. Sometimes something clicks, and then I got to have all of them. Happened with Gentle Giant, happened with King Crimson, happened with the Doors, happened with Alan Parsons. I'm sure there's some stuff like Ted Nugent looks like it's going to happen with him too. Some of the Buffalo Springfield, I like that one album, and then I got the other two. They weren't as good, but I still like them. Yeah, they are definitely their own thing. Is there really anybody that sounds like them? even now, like people could go and copy them and do stuff. Is there anybody who's big enough that people would know them that sound like the Doors? I don't think so. I mean, you could say the guy from Tea Party kind of sounds like Jim Morrison, which I think he does, but I don't think that Tea Party sounds anything like the Doors. They sound more like Led Zeppelin than they do the Doors. And I don't know if the Grateful Dead's coming anytime soon. The other guy that whenever I think of the Grateful Dead, and then this is not stylish. Like this isn't. I'm not suggesting that this person sounds anything like them. And Ben pretty much knows who I'm going to say here. They don't really sound anything like each other, but for whatever reason, when I hear one, I'm often reminded of the other one, and that's Frank Zappa. Now, I know I've taken some heat for my Frank Zappa stance here. And it isn't that I dislike Frank Zappa. I kind of like him. There's stuff that he does that I don't mind, but on a whole, he's not somebody, like I don't have any Frank Zappa albums. When I go to the record store, of course, the Frank Zappa bin is full because he's got so many albums. But I just never take any. I often, a couple times I've actually looked at them and said, well, I should get this one. Everybody says this is the one that I probably will like, and then I don't get it. So yeah, he's a little bit too jazzy for me, I guess. But then he has all kinds of different sounds, so you can't really peg hole him in one sound or another, right? He's one of about 2 or 3 guys in rock music that I think are actually legitimately geniuses, and people will label it. People say, "Oh, Ace Frehley's a genius." Sorry, but he's not. He's an average guitar player playing in a band that had a concept that worked well for them. So, but Frank Zappa, he's one of the 2 or 3 guys I think when you say genius, I agree with it. Pete Townsend is one of the other guys that I think that way about. And then I'm kind of hard pressed after that. There's lots of really talented guys with lots of great abilities, but those are the 2 for sure geniuses, in my opinion. Yeah, the funny part about the Dweezil thing and about Moon Unit is that he was on a talk show. I watched him one time. Funny guy, right? And the guy says, well, I'm glad to have you on the show. And the first thing out of his mouth, he says, I'm not going to talk about my kids' names. So if you bring them up, I'm leaving. So the guy didn't, which was good. Probably sick of talking about that. He named the kids because that's what he wanted to name them. But, he was a different kind of cat. He just was. He was definitely a strange individual. But musically, not just talking about his guitar ability. Yeah, it was Letterman. You're right. Exactly. I wasn't sure if it was, but when you said it, I knew it was. When you think about his the way he put music together, the guy was like Mozart in many ways. He had that same kind of strangeness about him, but at the same time, it was obviously he had some genius about him. Yeah, so those are the 2 guys that I think kind of are geniuses, and there may be others, but usually when you get somebody who's, I would go as far as saying Michael Jackson would be a genius. Nobody could do the kind of things dance-wise that he did. I wouldn't call him a musical genius, but he definitely had the musical dance genius part to him. Yeah, it's funny that he says he never did any drugs, but he certainly acts like he did plenty. He's just one of those quirky guys, Yeah, I've heard that too, Ben. I've heard people tell me that the more you know about him, the less weird you will think he is. But to be honest with you, I'm not buying it. I don't know if he did drugs or not. He says he didn't, and I actually believe that he's telling the truth. my. No, I don't want to go there. If he's the only one that made sense, I'm afraid to talk. He just had very strong opinions about stuff. He just definitely did. And that he thought a lot about it too. He just didn't come up with those opinions. He did have thoughts about them. I agree with two things you said, Ben. He was definitely never did any drugs. I buy that. It's kind of weird, but he didn't. Well, everybody did weed, then people don't even think of that as a drug anymore, do they? I'll just do a little weed with some opium in it. How's that? Anyways, guys, I got some baseball to attend to before I go to bed. Hopefully I'll stay awake. So I'm going to have to cut this short. So just to end it off on what we started it off. So these are the 6 studio albums by Blue Oyster Cult. Secret Treaties, number 1. Spectres, number 2. Agents of Fortune, number 3. Tyranny and Mutations, number 4. The debut album, number 5. And Mirrors, number 6. Not really. It gets 6th place because it's unfamiliarity, but once it's familiar, I'm suspecting it'll move up a little bit here. So those are the 6 studio albums released by Blue Oyster Cult back in the 1970s. That's the way I see them. If you guys want to write your own, you can do it that way too. Good night, Chocolate Baby. Thanks for showing up. Great conversation. Thanks for adding to the channel. Yeah, Angus Young, another kind of quirky individual, but I believe you are 100% right there. I don't believe he did any drugs. He might have done drugs, but he might not have either. I can believe it when you say that he was a straight, didn't do any drinking. I believe it. His high was playing that guitar on stage. That was obvious to me and probably most people. The guy was fully involved with that stage. And to be honest, his complete and utter commitment to the performance on stage is unrivaled by just about everybody out there. There's very few people in rock who I think were committed as much to that stage show as Angus Young was to his stage persona. Yep. Good night, everybody. Thanks for showing up and thanks for adding to the channel tonight. I really appreciate it. And we'll be back next week for those of you who are interested with the Hammer of the Gods. We'll be doing some more metal. I'm thinking it'll be my Judas Priest collection. I've been listening through it now for a couple of weeks. I think it'll be by the time next week comes out. I will probably have completed it and be ready to talk about it. See you later, guys. Thanks for showing up, Wade. I appreciate it. And we will see you all next week for Hammer of the Gods or in 2 weeks for my 70s hard rock ranking. So take care. Have a good night and goodbye. I wish my computer worked.